So you want to make sure that you're taking equity from someone whose values align with yours.
This episode of the BIG5D Podcast is brought to you by Telkom, gold sponsor of the 2026 BigFive Summit in Cape Town. At Telkom, possible begins here. Welcome to the BIG5D Podcast, where we have meaningful conversations about the business of African tech. I'm your host, Charles Laughlin, Chief Content Officer at BigFive Digital. So today we dive into a powerful conversation about the systematic biases and untapped opportunities that women face in tech and business in Africa. While the conversation is with two South African women, many of the themes that are surfaced in the conversation we're going to share with you today are truly universal. So this episode was originally recorded as a panel discussion at the 2026 BigFive Summit in Cape Town at Innovation City back in March. Our guests are Jill Kerr from Misfit Ventures. They're a pioneering debt fund that is explicitly challenging the traditional venture capital model by backing real economy, female-led SMEs. Also joining us was Laura Thomas, the founder of The Aligned Woman, which is an expert-led educational program for women navigating modern life. Jill and Laura help us break down the realities of the continent's massive venture capital funding gap. By most estimates, female-led companies garner only about 2% of the money raised by startups in Africa. Enough said. Let's go to our conversation with Jill Kerr and Laura Thomas.
Laura to join us. Jill, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you? And we had your colleague here last year, and she talked a little bit about Misfit, but tell us again what Misfit is.
Sure, thank you so
Misfit,
much.
how do you pronounce it?
Misfits, yeah.
Okay.
We named it that because we see ourselves as the misfits of the funding landscape. So I'm not as accomplished as my co-founder. She's much more good at these panels, but you've got me today. So Misfit Ventures was actually born out of the fact that we saw amazing female entrepreneurs, and they were outperforming. They were beating their competitors, they were raising more money, they were building businesses that were actually sustainable, that were hitting profitability, growing faster than some of the software as a service only businesses. But it was really hard for them to raise funding. And it was strange for us because they were outperforming. So why? And Misfit Ventures was born from that because when we did the research, female-led businesses are 70% less likely to default on debt than their male peers and offer 35% higher returns. And in South Africa, single women are actually the largest buyers of homes in our country. So they are the outperformers. They're the ones that generate most of the jobs and GDP, but they struggle to find access. So we are providing flexible loans that grow with the businesses.
I think last year when Eglo was here, you had recently made your first investment, was that right?
Yes.
Where are you at now in terms of how many companies you've funded?
So we've got 3 portfolio companies at the moment, and we're about to close our 4th and our 5th, which is very exciting. We aim to provide flexible debt of 100,000 Rand all the way up to 5 million Rand to 20 female-led SMEs in Southern Africa.
And one last before we broaden it, but what kinds of companies are there? Give a couple examples.
Of course. So we are not investing in the tech-only businesses. We like tech-enabled, but we really like the real economy. So our first business, they're an events coordinator that does events like this for large corporates. We've done...
Maybe next time we'll work.
Exactly. We've done a tomato juice manufacturer, a chili sauce manufacturer, and at the moment we're chatting to a fertilizer manufacturer.
Wow. So these sound like businesses that don't typically raise. Do you consider yourself a venture capital?
No, we don't consider ourselves.
It's that. Yeah.
No, we don't. The reason we...
Because you describe yourself on LinkedIn as friendly neighborhood venture capitalist.
Yes, because we needed to change how we talked about venture. We don't want it to be the, we wanted to actually go to everyone, not just a few people. So with venture capital, they've done about 5,000, 6,000 deals. There are 245 million SMEs on the continent. And as I said...
Sorry, say that number one more time.
245 million
SMEs, and that's down to a micro, and single person.
That's small, medium...
That's a Spezza shop on up.
All the way up, yeah.
Okay.
Profitable businesses that are operating. And if VC is supposed to be kind of the thing that's generating and funding this GDP, if you've only done 4,000 or 5,000 deals, that's not even a rounding error on 245 million.
Of those 200, however million that is, how many of those would be, it may be a ridiculous question, but are they all investable in your mind?
It is a very good question. So that's why we're only focusing on 20 female-led SMEs, because we want to show that by giving them the first check, that they can actually take that and then revolve that into a larger check. We're not trying to, we've got the amazing fintechs taking up that space, doing the Lulas of the world or the Bridgmans, and they're finding a space to actually, fund a larger portfolio. What we're really trying to prove with our portfolio is that we're trying to reduce this risk premium that SMEs seem to get, and specifically female-led SMEs. So we're really trying to prove that by investing in SMEs, you can maintain that source of value and actually create a decent return. We are a debt fund. We're not a venture capitalist promising 10x, returns. What we're really trying to do with this proof of concept debt book is prove that, to potential investors that you can actually invest in SMEs and you can do it profitably, but you do need to have the rigor and the due diligence processes in place to actually understand these businesses. And it's not going to be a venture capital due diligence. Do you know what I mean?
So Laura, tell us about you just told us about the hidden tax, but tell us about your actual startup, The Aligned Woman. And then tell us about your experience. Are you raising money, or are you thinking about raising money?
We're about to, yes.
Talk about how you're
so that's
approaching
really
it.
interesting. And I think the last talk that we just had, when he was talking about how people are not investing in fintech, like the actual tech itself anymore, it actually needs to be more about the idea. And that's why I was quickly taking down notes, because I was like, that's what we're doing. And so how we are building what we're doing at the moment, it's called the Aligned Woman Blueprint. It is a flagship course, and it's basically what we've done is we've taken experts from their field, and they are teaching every single module. And the course is to teach women everything they should have been taught but weren't. And this is born from my own burnout after 13 years of running an ad agency and it being incredibly successful. However, my body took a really bad turn and I had to take basically a year off to try and recover. So for me, I really wanted to try and make sure that no woman ever has to experience this again. So the women that are teaching this, though, are all complete professionals. So MBAs, PhDs. Another side of that is that I feel that the coaching industry is completely unregulated, and a lot of people are getting information from the incorrect places and the incorrect people, and it's actually doing more harm than good. So that was my way to try and not only bring the correct information, but bring it in a way that is actually from people that are respected, and that I know that whatever the education that these women are getting, it's actually going to be correct. So this is the foundation of it. And what builds credibility for the business is the experts that are behind it and the infrastructure that we've put behind it as well, which I could go on all day about. So this is just the beginning of it. What we're actually building towards is an ecosystem called a Women Life OS. So taking all the apps that we use as women, which are probably around 6 on average, and putting them into one app. And then taking AI and getting all that information to actually talk to each other. Because the issue is that women are complex. There are a lot of things that we have to handle and do. And the problem is that we have all this information, but if it's not talking to each other, it's useless. So putting it in a place and going, okay, well, and you can talk to it. So most people are already talking to ChatGPT like it's their therapist. Now we're taking this information that we've got from these experts that have taught this course, as well as the questions that the learners have been asking the experts, taking that information and teaching the AI. So by the time that the AI actually comes out and the app comes out, not only does the company have credibility, but it also has the infrastructure around it to actually teach someone. So say you're about to go into a meeting and you go, oh, I'm really feeling really nervous about this, and I don't know why I'm feeling this way. And then I go look onto the app and I'm like, hey, I don't really know what's going on. It'll ask you some prompted questions, maybe about your nervous system. Maybe it knows that last week something triggered you because it's noted that. But also maybe it knows that you're in your luteal phase. Yeah, so maybe, that's why you get it. So, maybe that is just the reason why, oh my God, I forgot that. Never mind, everything's fine, I'm not insane. And women get it. Women get it. So that is what I'm trying to do. And I'm really trying to get women's health and mental health into one place where we're actually able to access everything we need to know without going to a million different people to try and find it. And the reason why I talk about the female tax is because we're trying to behave like men in business, in life, and we're falling apart as a result because there's no blueprint to teach us how to live. We are writing the blueprint in real time, and there's no support that is caught up fast enough to help us. And this is the solution. Pitch ended.
What I wanted to ask about was sort of the experience women face in sort of pitching their business to a venture capitalist. How different is that from the male experience? Do you have a perspective? You must have opinions on this. And how has it evolved? Has it improved? But what is the experience of a female founder walking into a pitch versus a male founder?
It comes back to your previous talk about those unconscious biases. Most of the time when you're pitching, often the person on the other side of it is unfortunately going to be a white male.
I probably look like the guy.
Yeah. And it's because, there's this pattern recognition of, if I did it, someone like me is going to be able to do it, right? So oftentimes female entrepreneurs are not walking into a room and there's a bunch of female investment managers, and then...
Has that changed at all? I mean, it has changed some.
It has, no, it has. Yeah. There's actually some...
But not enough.
Not enough, yeah. But so it comes... Oftentimes for a female entrepreneur, they get asked, how are you going to be able to make this happen, and why you? Not, okay, cool, what are you going to do once you've succeeded? Which is often what they're asking their male counterparts.
Just an assumption of failure?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you pitched the business yet?
No.
But are you preparing for all of these barriers?
Absolutely. And
How do you think about it? How do you steel yourself?
I think awareness of things is important. When you bring awareness to people's minds, then they start thinking about it a lot more. Like, as I said in my speech, we don't recognize bias in ourselves, but it's easy to recognize it in other people. So, and actually one of the ways that we're pulling our courses together in the Line Women Co, no matter what course that we put people through, is something called the ALIVE method. And that stands for awareness, liberation, intention, vision, and execution. And awareness is there first for a reason, because you can't fix something without being aware of it first. So I think if I were to walk into a group of investors that were all white males, I'd probably say something about it. I'd probably say
right
this is pretty intimidating considering you're all white males and I'm a female. Feels a little...
Is it better to acknowledge the elephant in the room, or is it better to pretend it's not there?
Oh, make a joke of it.
No, I think it's much better to make a joke of it. Yeah.
I would agree, but I'm not. I only look like a venture capitalist.
Yes, Charles, what do you think?
Well, I mean, as a general statement, I mean, if there's an awkwardness, it's better to address the awkwardness.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, as a general statement.
And it's better...
If you know, everyone knows it. If it's just thick in the air,
And it's good to keep, I like that it's about the speaking about it. It's about having that conversation and saying, look, we're different, but, I've got something exciting here and I'm excited to share it with you. I also think that it is starting to change. You have seen a lot more of a push because the stats are all there, Any investment manager knows that diversity leads to better outcomes. They know that. But it's just about, almost like fighting that internal bias and having, a diversified team around you as well as the investment manager. That's what we're making sure, we have as Misfit Ventures, that it's not just, you make sure that you've got a team that actually represents the people that you're hoping to be investing into as well. Yeah.
So young female founders sitting right here, has a business idea, was launching a business, thinks it's investable, wants to go raise a seed round. What is your 5-minute talk or less than 5-minute talk to them? Both of you.
Well, I think for seed round, you want the right partners. That person, if you're asking for equity, is going to be with you. They're your husband. They're your, So you want to make sure that you're taking equity from someone whose values align with yours and whose vision for your business also aligns with yours. I also think, as much as often entrepreneurs think that they're the ones pitching and that they're the ones that always have to be selling. That's not the case. Actually, oftentimes we're looking for opportunities and we're trying to sell ourselves to you. So make sure that they're providing the value that they say they're going to, You hear a lot about kind of the value added things alongside VC and the money, but it's, really, do you like them? Can you actually have a decent conversation with them? Can you tell them bad news and you know that their response is going to be something supportive and an introduction to help you with that issue? Can you actually work with them and review them? For me, one of the things that I loved from the VC style was when the entrepreneur would be like, please, can you introduce me to your portfolio companies? I would like a direct introduction and I don't want you to be on the call. And I have to admit, and if those entrepreneurs say nice things about that investor, they both have worked very hard for that relationship. So yeah, be discerning, I think would honestly be my suggestion.
I know you're not a venture capitalist, but what would your coaching be to this young founder?
Sorry, to a founder?
You wanted to coach up the young founder just as she just did. What would you add?
I love what you said about decisiveness. And I'm sorry, being discerning. Sorry, wrong D. Being discernment. And I think discernment is definitely a skill that needs to be learned within anything that we're doing. And we often feel like we're asking for favors as women. We have this tendency where, you're doing me a favor. But I think when you shift the energy, people respond to what energy you're putting out there. So if you go in nervous, they're going to think they can take advantage. So I wouldn't say it's about faking it, but it's about showing up as your best self. So for me, that's always that. And then I also love what you said about values. I mean, it's a big thing that I do in terms of my coaching is that I'm like, okay, well, things aren't going right. What is not aligning with your values? Oh, I don't know what my values are. Okay, well, we're going to fix that because unless you don't have your values set out, you never know when someone's crossing your boundaries. So I think that was a really, really great point. And obviously you and I are quite aligned on that. I just think, values and just having that confidence within yourself about showing up as your best self. You can't go wrong.
This is for both of you, but primarily for you. We look at Africa, one of the things that's often said is as African founders exit and have money to invest in other founders, that sort of propels the ecosystem. Can you think of it the same way with female founders?
So actually, female founders are 90% more likely to reinvest in their communities that they come out of them. But I think what's interesting about the angels on the continent is they're tired.
They're what? I'm sorry?
They're tired. It's been about 12 years and they still haven't seen any money for their small stakes.
Okay.
Because unfortunately,
the stuff has to work ultimately. Yeah.
It does have to work, but we also have to understand where the venture capital ecosystem is in Africa. It's nascent. We're about, we're kind of just about 15 years in, so we're only starting to see the exits after 10 years now. And what previously in the US, that venture capital industry has been there for a very long time. The turnaround time for an angel is probably a year maximum before they actually see some liquidity back and then they can put it back into the system.
So the angel network's kind of tapped out, is that what you're saying?
The angel network's a little bit tapped out. Okay. So we need to see a little bit more of the exits along the way, but we actually...
So you need You need to refill the pipeline.
Yes, but that's
Okay.
also why we actually signed an MOU with ABAN. They have kind of the largest angel networks across Africa, specifically because we're trying to offer the angels debt products. So where we can say, look, you don't need to wait kind of 10 years for your nice equity check. Give us a little bit of capital and we'll give you some nice interest every year and we'll, give that capital back at the end of 4 years. So you're
So
getting...
you're using this to raise money?
Yes, 100%.
Fair enough. Okay.
Definitely need to get the angels out here. But I think it's just that ecosystem. There needs to be more of a solution than just the equity. I think needs to be a few more instruments that angels and kind of other funders can tap into, that we can actually create that liquidity, because I think that's the biggest issue here. You've got a lot of really awesome funders, and you've got a lot of great funds that actually have capital. But it's doing how do you get the exits? How do you create that liquidity? And I think we've just got a bit of time to go. So.
Okay. If anyone wants to jump into the conversation, I'm going to walk over with the mic again.
I have questions every single time.
Sorry.
I just wanted to ask, because I was part of an organization called Future Females, which is very focused on female entrepreneurship, and so I'm quite aware of the stats. I know it's improved marginally across the board, but women only receive about 2% of VC funding. Since we live in South Africa, on the African continent, I'm also just curious as to how many women of color actually get access to funding, and how many times do they have an opportunity to actually step into the room, considering that women of color will take up majority of the country versus the white faces we see around us.
I mean, yes, look, I say it's improving. I think there's a few more female fund managers. Unfortunately, the investment into female-led startups has actually gone down. It was 9%. It's now gone down to 2%, even though you've had such a push of, people trying to focus on this. It's a tough one, but you are starting to see the shifts, because there are a few more of those female fund managers. I think as long as your business is good and it's sustainable in a ways that it can make profit, it's solving a real problem, you're always going to have customers for that. And if you have customers, you're always going to have investors. So as long as you are making a space for yourself that's, solving that issue, there will always be investors that will see that and want to be investing in you. Look, we obviously have a bias for Black female founders, but that doesn't mean we're not going to be investing in white women. We want to have a diversified portfolio. Again, diversity equals those returns. So, but I think it's always about making sure that you're selling yourself to those right investors that get it, understand why women are awesome, but then also making sure that, that business you're building can sell itself as well.
For a young woman who wants to start a business, again, back to that, what is it, the best background, is it to work for somebody else, or is it good to start a business early, or sometimes it's a necessity, but talk about sort of the ideal pathway for somebody to build a successful business. Do you have to learn from others, or just have to jump in and do it? Is there some combination of the two? Just talk about that.
Okay, starting a business, I have to say we were pushed into it.
That often is the case, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was because we kept seeing this as a big issue, and we were like, why are they not getting funding? This makes no sense to us. They're outperforming, they're doing so well. And we kept kind of going to the more experienced kind of fund managers. We kind of went to a few more people in the ecosystem and said, well, what about this? Let's do it like this. And everyone was just like, no, I don't get it. That's not going to make any money. I wouldn't do that. We even spoke to female fund managers who said, I wouldn't have a female focus as a debt fund. Why are you doing that? That's silly. I don't even tell people that we don't even have any women in our portfolio. So that for me was, I was like, okay, no.
Did that blow your mind, or was that surprising or not?
It was, to be honest, I think we were a bit naive. I think it was surprising because I was coming from the venture capital space where I was seeing all of them outperform. So I was like, it seems like the evidence is all there. And even statistically, the
evidence can be overrated, right?
Exactly. So I think, it was surprising to me that we almost kind of got forced into that piece. But I think what also is really important is you actually have to care about what you're doing, and you have to find some value from it. You have to find some inspiration from it, because if you don't, it's a really hard journey. And I only learned that after starting Misfit Ventures, of how hard it is to be an entrepreneur. So I have to say, I think start whenever. It's never, no one knows more than a problem than you're experiencing. But I also think for all investors, you should give being an entrepreneur a shot, because it's good to realize how hard it is.
You have any thoughts on that?
As someone who started her first business when I was 4, as you know.
Okay, what was it?
Never too early.
Very too early. Yeah. I started my marketing agency.
I want to hear about the 4-year-old business first.
Lots of very important documents in that briefcase, and you just saw in that photo. But I started my agency when I think I was 23, and by that stage, I could kind of climb the ladder really quickly, and I was already managing a group for Saatchi and Joburg. So I think I'd already got quite a lot of experience at a really young age, and someone had asked me to go to a dinner with them. They were like, listen, we've got these investors from the US. I don't really know much about marketing and digital and stuff. Will you just come and wingman me? So I was like, okay, cool. So I went and we had this conversation, and he was like, you're really great. Let's just hire your agency. And I was like, I don't have an agency, but I was just like, yeah, sure. I'll see if we have capacity. And that's literally how I started my business, and it was Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola Rockcore. Rockcore is a international initiative where they go around and they get stars. So you've had Lady Gaga as one of their performers, incredible stars that give their time freely, and the only way that you can get a ticket is by volunteering your time to a notable organization. So Coca-Cola decided to sponsor it, and then that was literally my first client. So I think being an entrepreneur is something that's either in your blood or it's not. I think if you don't have a pull to do it, don't do it. It's not as easy as you think it is. It is as hard as you think it might be, times that by 1,000,000. To have resilience and grit is one thing, but to be an entrepreneur is something completely different. However, on the other side of the coin, it is also one of the most rewarding things that you will ever, ever, ever do. I think the amount of pain versus the amount of pleasure is probably exactly the same. But I think we're just a different kind of breed. If you're not called to it, don't do it. But if you are, you won't be happy in a normal job.
But is there a test for how you're an entrepreneur?
Yeah, probably how insane you are.
Okay.
Yeah, quite frankly.
Or if you start a business before you're 10 years old, that's
It's a good signal, hey?
a good signal.
Did you have a business before you were 10 years old?
To be perfectly honest, no. I'm
Selling candy door-to-door counts.
I'm a typical investor, hey? I'm going to sit here and give you money, and you do the hard work. And I think it really was. You're standing on the mountain, on the backs of giants, to be perfectly honest. I did also have a mother that literally kept saying, start your own thing, do it. And I think you need that. You need that support as well to know that you do have giants behind you a little bit.
All right. Last chance. We've lost a bit to Cape Town traffic, which happens. But anyway, thank you so much. This has been fun. Just as an FYI, this will be reshared later as a podcast, with your permission, which I hope I have.
That's a bit more scary, but that's fine.
All right. Thank you so much, and thank you, everyone.
Thanks for joining the BIG5D Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Laughlin. The show is a production of Big5 Digital. If you'd like to book a guest or sponsor an episode, write to us at big5dtv@gmail.com. See you next time for more conversations about the business of African tech.